More Like Home by Like to Laugh on AO3, Chapter 33. Tim's idea was a stroke of genius. He brought up Danny's technopathy. There are a lot of ways to hack into computers, but it pretty much comes down to two things. Tim explained, turning his computer so Danny could see the screen as he worked. The first step is gaining access to someone's computer. That can be stealing a password, getting them to download a file that gives you access, or just exploiting an existing vulnerability. You with me so far? No. Danny frowned at the computer. He never really pressed Tucker about how he did what he did. It was enough that he did well. Still, he tried to follow along as Tim just pulled up a list of GIW passwords and typed one in. Where had he even gotten that? Tim seemed unfazed. Okay, where did I lose you? Danny considered. I get stealing passwords. How does a file give you access? What kind of vulnerability? How do you find that? A file gives you access by planting code onto the computer, which is the second part. Tim explained. You can do it the slow way, where you plant spyware to pick up passwords over time and send them to you, or you can do it the fast and code your own way directly into the system. Some poor sucker downloads the file. It runs itself. It installs software. Make sense? Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Same concept as installing anything else. Danny nodded. And the other thing? Tim hummed. Have you ever had a smartphone where you could skip the password by pulling up a news story or something? Danny made a face. Yeah, some old LexCorp phones had that problem. There's a security vulnerability, a way into the system that hasn't been locked down. Most of the time, you find those because it's a known problem with that system. Danny nodded slowly, tucking that away. Okay, so say you're in a system and you steal data and plant software. Bingo, Tim confirmed and pulled up another file. Danny scanned it. Apparently the GIW was trying to figure out where the hell Phantom had gone. You can either steal files directly or install spyware that will send you the files containing certain keywords or other criteria. Or you can install a virus to wipe their system, giving you an access point you can use to falsify data. That sort of thing. Oracle and I are good enough to do that on the spot, but most people will use a packaged files to install software. Danny tilted his head, considering. Which makes you more versatile, right? Tim nodded. And how much of that are you going to teach me? We'll start with the basics, Tim said, businesslike and focused. They spent a few hours on that. Tim walked Danny through the basic principles of coding, exploring the structure of a computer system, some particular strings that would probably be useful, and various types of antivirus systems. I don't know if any of them will detect you as a threat, Tim said, but better safe than sorry. That left them in the Batcave, where everyone was making an attempt whatsoever to disguise their curiosity as Danny shifted nervously in front of the Bat computer. Bruce, Cass, Steph, and Damien were all gathered around him. Tim was settled in front of it, ready to counter. What if I break it? Danny said anxiously, glancing at the complicated machine. We have several backups, Bruce informed him, because of course they did. Go on. This could prove to be a valuable skill. Danny tried to smile and then turned and dove inside. Immediately, Danny was struck with the sense of having pressed through a portal, disorientation briefly taking over before he shook his head to clear it out and opened his eyes. He was standing on the login screen, like he was a See, my G. He looked to where the others must be, but he couldn't see the outside the screen. Right. He turned to focus on the login window and flew up to examine it. He didn't know the password. According to Tim, it changed minute by minute, and he hadn't learned the trick yet. Frowning, he tapped tentatively on the password bar and jumped when an interface like a 15-digit combination locked open in front of him. Well, nothing to do but try. He reached out and spun the first, watching it flicker through letters, numbers, special characters. And there, one of them stood out from the rest. It was outlined or three-dimensional, and he lunged for it. T. It locked in. He smiled and then turned to the next, more confident now. It took him a couple tries to get through. He wasn't fast enough on the first two. The password changed before he could finish inputting it. But the third time, he made it in, and he grinned, proud of himself. That wasn't all, though. He looked around, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The computer had opened into a tunnel, with branches leading off in different directions. One to a video conference room, another to a wall of screens monitoring various parts of Gotham, and a third to a line of readouts from various trackers and panic buttons that they currently had active. Danny went down one that led to a file room and picked one out at random, rifling through the cabinets. The cabinets disappeared. Danny yelped, pulling away, and another cabinet started disappearing as well. Tim must be moving them elsewhere. Thinking quickly, Danny threw up a shield around the rest, picking up another file, glancing around warily. His shield started to crack. Danny reinforced it, concentrating. But Tim seemed to have gotten the hang of it quickly, and the shield shattered. The files started disappearing again. Then Danny realized that the door he used to enter had disappeared too. "This isn't funny," he complained, flying to where the door had been, trying to phase through the wall, but apparently that was one thing that didn't work here. He backed off and looked around, trying to think. Given how his powers seemed to be working here, he grabbed one of the few remaining files and a pen in his utility belt, scribbled down a code string that should give him a path back to the hard drive. He tucked it back into the filing cabinet, and the door appeared right behind the cabinet. He bolted out. It worked. Tim was going to be pissed. Danny snickered to himself and kept exploring. Around him, he could see Tim's efforts to distract and disable him, both of them slowly working out the logic of how Danny's powers worked. In this environment, mostly doors disappeared from around him. Extra locks appeared on others. He tried to write his way into one of those, but Tim started deleting the code before he was done, so he abandoned it. At one point, he was pretty sure Tim tried to set a virus on him, but an ectoblast took care of it just fine. The game finally ended when Danny went into an empty room, and Tim deleted the door behind him. Danny panicked for a moment, trying to write his way out again, but Tim was much faster and now onto his tricks. Then a door appeared again. Danny tried to open it, then something thick and acidic started to crawl up his arm. At that point, Danny yelped and dove out of the computer, alarmed. He ended up sprawled on the floor, wincing as he tried to shake off the burn on his hand, then looked up to see everyone staring at him with varying expressions of exasperation and amusement. "Well, that was weird," Tim decided at last, turning around to consider him, eyebrows raised. "How did that kick you out?" Danny held up his burnt hand. "I downloaded a virus onto you and it burned you in real life." "You downloaded a virus onto me?" Danny demanded, offended. "I tricked you into accessing a link that had a virus." "Yeah," Tim agreed, unfazed. "What happened on your end?" "I tried to open a door and weird black slime came out and it started crawling up my arm," Danny informed him, sighing. He accepted the jar of salve Bruce pushed onto him and started applying it. "I kind of panicked. What did you see?" "You first," Bruce disagreed, frowning. Danny smiled sheepishly. Bruce did really dislike the magic rules Danny's powers operated on.
Start from the beginning.
Danny struggled, pushing Ace to sort out his thoughts, closing up the jar. Well, at first, I was just on the login screen, and I hacked the password, pretty much the way they open combination locks in the movies. You know what I mean. Bruce nodded. Tim made a face, and Steph snickered, elbowing him.
We'll have to figure out a way to prevent that.
Tim noted to Bruce, frowning.
There is at least one other ghost that can do that.
Danny nodded. Technus, yeah. We should be able to work something out, I think. He continued, walking through the process of exploring the tunnels, figuring out how to insert his code into things, and then asked, "What did you see?"
The bat computer interface stayed mostly normal, except minor oddities,
Tim informed him.
For the most part, you seemed to behave as if you were just a user with remote access, but I could see the shields you put up around files, and clicking on them seemed to damage them.
Danny nodded.
The code you wrote appeared in some strange places, mostly in random parts of file windows.
Danny smiled sheepishly. I was kind of writing on the walls.
Yeah.
Bruce pinched the bridge of his nose, and Steph
snickered.
Tim just sighed.
I hate you,
he said without heat. He turned away, grabbed a stack of sticky notes, and started scribbling.
If this works, I'll never forgive you.
Danny snorted.
I tried out a few kinds of viruses on you. The only one that worked was the link. It seemed like you blasted the wiper I set on you.
Danny nodded.
And we saw speech bubbles when you spoke. You might be able to give verbal commands.
Huh. All right, that would be cool. Danny accepted the stack of sticky notes Tim shoved at him, which now had lines of code scribbled on it. Oh, you think I can stick these on stuff and have it work?
Unfortunately, it seems in line with how you describe inserting it yourself. Tim's expression was flat.
Danny grinned.
Great!
Danny had let Alfred wrap his hand before they went, but even that couldn't dampen his enthusiasm. He all but vibrated in the air, bouncing back and forth with anticipation as they headed towards the lower office building. He didn't think anyone would notice since he was invisible, but apparently Bruce could pick up at least some of it from the air contents or something, because he pinned Danny with a look that made him go still, smiling sheepishly. His core hadn't gotten really bad yet, not like with the ectoplasm. Its hum was a bit strained in his chest, but he was still looking forward to diving back into things, and this would be new ground for him. He didn't do much infiltration in Amity. They had gotten there close to 11, and Bruce stopped, turning to face Danny. His mouth had dipped into a grim slash, and Danny felt himself straighten up accordingly.
Do you remember where your bugs are?
Bruce asked him. Danny nodded, reaching down to tap the pocket on the utility belt Bruce had insisted on.
Plant 3 of them. 1 in the head office, 1 in the bathroom, and 1 in the elevator. Do you know where to place them?
Inside vents, under table surfaces, inside services, and behind appliances. Danny rattled off. At least that was where he looked for Vlad's. Bruce gave him an unreadable look, but nodded.
We're looking for names and locations,
he reminded Danny, voice low.
We don't want to give them any warning. They'll move the victims as soon as they think they might be found.
Got it, Danny said, quiet and serious. There was a particular kind of focus that fell over him when he needed his full attention for hero work. A good feeling, if intense. He needed to do this, and he needed to do it right.
I'm going now. Bruce nodded sharply and settled on his heels to watch the office building. Danny flew toward it alone, phasing inside without hesitation. The main office is on the top floor, Oracle reported in Danny's ear. Go there first, but be careful. There's a meeting there right now. Danny hummed in soft information and flew up to a floor to the 6th level, where he could make out voices. He flew towards them. Finally cooperating, a woman's voice said, audibly pleased. We should be able to move the lot of them next month. If we get that far, a man said darkly. Danny phased into the room, taking the furthest corner so his chill wouldn't spook them. There were 3 people in the room, a man at the desk, 2 seated to be reporting in, a man and a woman. Don't let your guard down. Never forget that this is bad territory and those bastards work fast. If they were all that, Gotham wouldn't be squeaky clean, wouldn't it? Another man scoffed. All sorts of groups work under their noses all the time. We just have to figure them out. Danny's mouth twitched. Obviously. The first man frowned at his computer and rapped on it in annoyance. Damn junk computer! Phantom, pull back, Oracle said sharply. You're having an effect on their systems. Panic flashed through Danny, and without thinking, he yanked his aura in, pulling back the energy that radiated off him at all times. The man sighed and started clicking through something on his computer. That handled it. Oracle's voice calmed, taking an edge of exasperation. You're clear.
There it is, the man muttered. We're still working on the convenient Arkham breakout to take Batman's eyes off of us. Remember, we ain't the big potatoes here anymore. Ever miss it? The second man asked worriedly. Metas might be good money, but no one respects good old-fashioned crime when there's supervillains around.
Shut up, you old fart, the woman snapped. Anything that keeps those stupid heroes off our backs is fine by me.
If you don't have anything else to report, you can scram, the first man said impromptly. Richie, I expect you to silence your new guy in one way or another by Thursday, understand?
Richie scoffed. He talks big, but he won't say nothing.
Yeah, I got him. The first man grunted, and Danny waited for the first 2 to leave, and then smiled as an alarm went off downstairs. The first man cursed and got up. Danny barely waited for the door to close behind him before he was moving. Without a word, he snuck a bug under the desk, then straightened up and dove into the computer. Compared to the Bat computer, this organization's computer system was simple. He forced his way through the logon on the first try and darted through the hallway. He ended up in a more like school hallway than a vault, like the Bat computer had been. Danny quickly found the file room and snuck a few sticky notes onto the cabinets. They had faded from sight. A mirror appeared on the ceiling, and the files began to duplicate and fly up into it. Presumably to Oracle or Tim's computers. Danny grinned. His comm crackled. Good work, Phantom. Can you hear me? Are you still in? Oracle's voice came through as surprisingly clear, considering he was disguised and all. I can hear you, he said, floating back out of the file room. And I'm still in, yeah. Do you need something while I'm here? Damn, I owe Spoiler $15, Oracle said without missing a beat, and then, I'm going to walk you through accessing the dark website this organization uses for communications. See if you can find a hidden browser, probably with an onion logo. An onion logo? Tor, most popular for this sort of thing. Go on.
Danny quickly found the browser in question, hidden behind a shirt curtain, oddly and sidelined inside. Carefully following Oracle's instructions the best he could. Fortunately, it looked like Tim had given him most of the commands he needed, and Oracle was just walking him through using them. From there, she led him through the internet, a much more intimidating web of portals and threads, and straight to a messaging website the Ringlingers used, which was, for him, another filing cabinet. This one full of nothing but transcriptions of this guy's past conversations. Danny could do without looking at most of those, to be honest. He rifled through the most recent ones, quickly finding one laid out plans for exchange, presumably when they were planning to move the victims. He focused and grabbed the transcript, which duplicated itself. Anything else I should look for? That should do. Head out and plant the rest of the bugs. On it! Danny found himself grinning. With some effort, he went invisible and phased out of the computer. Now, with some files under his arm, the office was still empty. Thankfully, he took the opportunity to vanish back into the hall. Bathrooms on your left. Richie had gone right to the bathroom after the conversation, and Danny paused as he saw something on the counter. You think I can take that? He asked Oracle quietly. Go for it. Danny grabbed Richie's forgotten phone off the counter and turned it off, then slipped it into his pocket and planted a bug in the vent, and then disappeared towards the elevator, where the last bug went under the railing. Perfect, Oracle assured him. Head out. Danny smiled to himself, delight humming through his core, and darted through the wall and went out the building.